Have you ever heard of George Washington Carver? He might not have been president, but his impact was huge. This man literally changed America with peanuts. Most people don't know much about George Washington Carver, but if you lived during the early 20th century, you'd have seen his face everywhere. It seemed like he was in more magazines than the president, and his ideas were everywhere too, in farms across the country. He became famous for being a peanut genius. And the crazy thing is, he didn't even like peanuts at first. We'll get into how this happened later, but for now, let's see what kind of genius we're dealing with here. As soon as you start learning about George Washington Carver, you realize he wasn't your average person. For one, there's a lot of mystery surrounding him because he was born into slavery and his birth records were lost or destroyed. We don't know exactly when he was born, so we just celebrate it as February. That's all we know. He was born on a plantation in Diamond, Missouri, and he ended up learning the ways of the farm, which turned out to be a big deal later. When George was 21 years old, his owners decided to free him. So they handed over some money, gave him a mule, and let him go on his way. He then went to study at the Iowa Agricultural College, earning a bachelor's degree in 1890 and a master's degree in 1894. All this means is that he was one smart cookie. After studying, he taught agricultural classes and did research at Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. This was an institute for African Americans, and many of the students had come from poor families who worked on farms. George Washington Carver understood their struggles because he had grown up on a farm too, so he was perfectly placed to help these people. Back then, most farmers would plant cotton on their fields, and cotton was great. It grew quickly and made lots of money. But after a while, the soil started to become very poor, and farmers couldn't make enough money from cotton anymore. This is where George Washington Carver stepped in. Farmers were desperate for new crops to plant, and this is when George Washington Carver started doing experiments. He wanted to find a crop that wouldn't take too much work and that could improve the soil instead of hurting it. It took some time, but eventually he found the perfect solution. In the end, it was a legume called a cowpea that did the trick. These are also known as black-eyed peas, and they're still popular today. George Washington Carver realized that these types of beans contained nitrogen. Nitrogen is a really important ingredient for healthy soil. When they're planted, they basically fertilize the land without having to use man-made fertilizers. Not only that, but they also prevent erosion. This is when the soil is washed away by wind or rain. Cotton fields would often get completely ruined by the end of the season. But with cowpeas, the roots held on to the soil and protected it. Cowpeas were the perfect solution. They helped the soil stay strong and healthy. And after farmers tried them out, they loved it. Their yields increased and everything was looking good. The problem was that nobody really liked eating cowpeas. Sure, they were good for the soil, but not many people wanted to put them on their plate. George Washington Carver knew this, and he came up with a plan. He was going to change the minds of Southerners when it came to cowpeas. He promised that he would show them recipes that would make them love the dish. And that's exactly what he did. He showed people how to turn cowpeas into tasty meals that everyone could enjoy. Southerners were hooked. They loved the taste and they loved how easy it was to cook. Soon, everybody was planting cowpeas and enjoying delicious meals made with them. George Washington Carver had done it again. And to be honest, this wasn't even his biggest achievement yet. One day, George Washington Carver got a visit from a man named Booker T. Washington. Booker was the founder of the Tuskegee Institute, and he told George that he needed his help in Georgia. You see, farmers in the South had recently gotten tired of growing cotton. It had become too hard to farm, and it just wasn't worth their time anymore. They were thinking about quitting and growing nothing at all. And that's when George Washington Carver stepped in. He visited the farms and saw how things were done, and he realized that they needed a miracle. He told them to keep planting, but instead of cotton, he asked them to grow peanuts. They looked at him as if he was crazy. Peanuts weren't valuable at all, they thought. Who wants to spend all that time and effort on something that won't make any money? But George Washington Carver was confident that he could make something out of peanuts, and he promised to teach them how to make money from peanuts. So the farmers agreed. As the seasons passed, the peanut harvest grew bigger and bigger, and at the same time, George Washington Carver was working on his secret plan. He had lots of ideas about how to use the peanuts. First off, he showed people how to turn peanuts into milk. This was perfect for times when cows didn't produce enough milk, so now they could use peanuts instead. Next, he taught people how to use peanut oil for cooking. The oil was perfect for frying, and it tasted delicious. And let's not forget about peanut butter, something that kids love even today. George Washington Carver also developed the first peanut butter recipe. Finally, he even figured out how to make soap and glue out of peanuts. Everything was going well and the farmers were excited. Then, suddenly, a storm swept through and ruined almost all the peanuts. They were devastated. After all their hard work, they had almost nothing to show for it. But George Washington Carver told them not to worry. He already had a plan for next year. He taught them how to rotate their crops so that one year they would grow peanuts and the next year they would grow something else. This way, their soil would always be healthy and they would never have bad harvests again. But what about the peanuts that hadn't been ruined? Well, George Washington Carver was ready for those too. He used them to teach people all over the country about the amazing benefits of peanuts. He even convinced major companies to start using peanut oil in their products. This meant that farmers could sell their peanuts for a lot of money. They were finally making a fortune from peanuts just like George Washington Carver had promised. This is why you can still find peanut plants in almost every southern state today. Farmers continued to grow peanuts for many years, and they used the money to buy things like tractors and other tools that made farming easier. It was a win-win situation. The farmers made money, the companies made products, and the people got to enjoy delicious food made with peanuts. But there's more to the story because it turns out that George Washington Carver actually did not like peanuts at all. Yes, you heard that right. He didn't like the taste of them, and he didn't even want to touch them. But he decided to promote peanuts anyway. Why? Well, that's because he knew that people didn't like cowpeas anymore. So he needed to find something new to replace cotton. Peanuts were the perfect solution because they were already popular and people loved to eat them. They just needed someone to show them how to make the most out of them. And that's exactly what George Washington Carver did. He showed the world that no matter what you have, you can make something out of it if you try hard enough. Today, we still remember George Washington Carver for his amazing inventions, and we also admire his kindness. Even though he didn't like peanuts, he still taught people how to use them to make their lives better. This just shows us that it doesn't matter what you like or don't like. What matters is that you help others and make the world a better place. You see, George Washington Carver wasn't just a peanut genius. He was also a caring person who wanted to help others. That's why he became famous for saying, "In the end, we are our choices." He believed that each choice we make makes us who we are, and his choices led him to become one of the most influential scientists of his time. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Also, remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Now, before you go, I have a question for you. What do you think is the most important lesson we can learn from George Washington Carver? Let us know in the comments below.